Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport podcast. I'm your host DD and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about pretty much what's happened over the last 2 weeks in the world of F1. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant. We missed this past week. We couldn't get together. Conversation. Hello Vedant. We missed this past week. We couldn't get together.
Yeah,
How are
I'm
you feeling now?
better. I am better and energized. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And we are recording right after the end of the Mexico GP. Max Verstappen has just set a new record. Mexico GP, Max Verstappen has just set a new record of 14 wins in a season, surpassing Sebastian Vettel. And Sergio Perez once again on the podium in third place, just like last year. But let's get into it. We have a bit of a backlog of questions from the week of the US GP this week. So our first question, Vedant, this week is: how is the new advertising technology introduced by McLaren at the USGP going to change sponsorship in F1? And that is obviously referring to the sort of screen that they have on the body that can, advertise whatever, changeably almost.
Is going to be revolutionary. Obviously, the the biggest issue would be the weight, but I believe obviously they won't use these panels throughout the car. These panels would be situated in very unique places of the car that much, and overall the weight, like the digital technology in today's time, we know is very it has come a long way ahead from whatever we can imagine, right? So I'm pretty sure it can be adapted, and weight would be an issue. And if McLaren have tested it, I'm pretty sure teams can get it started with by 2024.
I think the tipping point of using this technology will be, when I think the tipping point of using this technology will be, when teams can get the cars under the
Minimum
you
weight,
know
yeah.
minimum weight limit almost, and they're trying to add ballast and trying to do more with the car, because even right now teams are struggling with that. But I think obviously it has to be safe and with that. But I think obviously it has to be safe and whatnot. But I think it's great. It reminds me of the different ways you can sponsor something, especially in all the other sports, especially talking about cricket. We have every little action sponsored by a different company or organization. Like action sponsored by a different company or organization. Like a six is sponsored by someone, a four is sponsored by someone, a wicket, a catch, everything is sponsored by someone, and it is really an extension of almost wearable technology, if you must. So which also begs the question in my brain is, how much longer before anything but that has such wearable technology that can change sponsors and display different sponsors based on um, you know like crypto.com,
Yeah.
obviously sponsors the sprint races. So how much longer before that becomes a thing on the driver, on the t-shirts or whatever the driver is wearing, the hats, whatever, right? Or the team is wearing, pit stops and that sort of stuff. So it really begs the question: how far can they take this technology to really maximize the revenue
Yeah, I mean,
across the
it's
weekend?
brilliant if you think about it from a sponsor's point of view. So whenever whenever the, let's say, the onboard camera is, the sponsor might strike a deal with the team that whenever that happens, you switch the screen. Like, let's say for example, the digital screen is on the halo itself, and whenever the onboard camera is switched on, the advertising to the sponsor that is paying them more for that particular segment and that particular camera angle, sort of. So it's incredible. And to think that when these 2022 cars were announced, we all thought that we all thought that the wheel covers were going to be, yeah.
I was just gonna
So we
mention
all
that it's gonna
thought
go
that,
that
but
way, yeah.
of course these are Formula One teams. They are, and yeah, the,
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see some stuff on the wheel. Yeah, I mean, it'll be exciting to see some stuff on the wheel rims, moving forward. But yeah, the opportunities are endless with this. I mean, the teams could do like really tacky stuff with this. Like you have the chrome logo on the McLaren, and with as it spells out chrome,
Yeah,
do something during a pit stop. Um, so this like I said, the possibilities are endless, and I'm really excited to see how the teams exploit this moving forward, because it will really solve a problem, because there are still teams who are operating under uh, like when I say under the budget cap, like much lower than what the budget cap says. Teams like that, I'm sure they would love to be able to completely utilize uh, their real estate, not just on the car but also on different aspects that have been very static now, and can be changed to a more dynamic approach moving forward, like maybe even like just the chairs and the the
yeah,
furniture that they use in the garage,
absolutely,
maybe even like just the chairs and the the
yeah,
furniture that they use in the garage, that
absolutely.
that usually has
I mean,
that's what I'm saying, the
if that
possibilities are
screen
absolutely
is
endless.
lightweight, is durable,
I think it was like 190 grams,
yeah,
that one particular screen,
it should
like
be
including
lightweight, it
everything
should be
else.
durable, and it should have good connectivity and good quality. I mean, basically, obviously, they'll only use it if it's good quality and good connectivity, right? But if it is feasible, then the possibilities of anything are endless. And yeah, this is a world of marketing and digital marketing right now. See where this goes.
Yeah, I'm excited. All right, let's move on to our second question of the day, Vedant, and that is launching another W Series the right step for female talent development by F1? So obviously, this is referring to F1 announcing that they'll be introducing a new female-only feeder series. I think next year is when it will start. But the only difference between this series and W Series will be that this series will focus on driver development by including much younger female drivers in the pool of drivers who will be competing within the series. Much younger female drivers in the pool of drivers who will be competing within the series.
Yeah, the Formula One
What are
owned
your
series
thoughts?
is going to be a F4 category, right? And the W Series is a regional F3 category, sort of. So F, uh, that's the difference. But I still think it is a long shot. They're trying to do a good thing, of course, but having seen what ended up, having seen what ended up with the issue with W Series, I think they should have used some of W Series' experience and resources as well. See, Formula One, the new series would be owned than W Series could have done with their product. So
Exactly.
yeah, it can
I
go
mean,
either way.
I mean, let's just explore the let's just explore the advantages
Yeah,
of being associated by F1 directly, right? Not only are there the support series running with F1, that is another question we have to tackle, right? What happens? Oh, that is another question we have to tackle, right? What happens to W Series if they all F1 has another feeder series like W Series running on the same weekend? But we'll come back to that later, right? So you get to run with F1 whenever you are racing, basically, right? So you might get to travel across the world, whatever that might be like. But that also means that so you might get to travel across the world, whatever that might be like. But that also means that the video footage, the race footage, and everything will be
yes,
available on F1 TV. There might be a deal with Sky instead, because Sky also broadcasts F2 and F3. So clearly you'll be catching more eyeballs. If you're doing driver development, which means depend on how they do it, but the teams might also have a stake in it. The way they go about sponsoring what goes on with this particular series. So obviously there are a lot of advantages just off the bat, of F1 doing it instead of a third-party organization, let's say, almost, or someone outside of F1 doing it. But how do you see, the future of W head, or
yeah. I
what do you
mean,
think is gonna
I
happen?
don't think these two would merge anytime in the future. If at all F1 can get this thing going, W Series is going to suffer a lot. That Yeah, but
Yeah, even though
that's
they're
the
saying
truth.
it won't, yeah.
If let's say a sponsor, they'd rather be associated with the Formula One series than the W Series. And I think in terms of talent
Yeah.
acquisition and talent growth, basically, starting at Formula 4 level is a very great way. it gives the girls in karting a great chance to step up. Otherwise, they would have had to do
Yep.
F4 on their own and then get into W Series and Formula 3. So that that's of course another dynamic, but so that that's of course another dynamic, but having seen W Series struggle this season, I think if it all goes well, W Series might struggle more, but then the Formula 1 women's racing series would be much more successful than W Series is.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bring up the same points, right? Yes, it will grab more eyeballs from the get-go, but I think the success will still lie in, these whoever
Yeah,
participates in
absolutely.
them moving forward. Moving up the feeder series ladder, creating a ladder system for these girls going forward, so that going into F3 and F2 or is much easier than those who are already doing it. Is there a sponsorship system? Is there a financial reward at the end of the series for the winners? What is going to happen? Obviously, even on the indie side of things, it's not a full sponsorship for the whole season, but it's like a part season sponsorship, and things fall into place eventually. So I think that those are the aspects that F1 will still have to add to it in order to be really successful, instead of simply making the most of their resources.
Yeah,
and
but
their
the biggest
reach to people.
opportunity is that F1 can do that.
Their resources.
Yeah,
and
but
their
the biggest
reach to people.
opportunity is that F1 can do that. F1 has ties with Formula 2 and Formula 3, both the organizations, and with this being 100%, with this series, the new series being 100% property of Formula 1, they can absolutely make something work out to get the champion and the runner-up, even the top 3 move up into Formula 3, or find some other seats in motorsports and move ahead, basically. Yeah.
Yep, and I think series. What is the future of W Series podcast? And I'm going to say the same thing. I think what F1 is doing presents a really good opportunity for W Series
Yeah.
to pivot and become a race team instead of a race series organization. So that is at least how I look at it. You don't have to compete with F1 because it's all in, at least in my head, from where we are sitting, it seems impossible to compete with F1 given the resources that they have. And secondly, it seems to be a more successful model to be a race team than it seems to be a more successful model to be a race team than to go racing with your own series that does not have as many eyeballs as possible. Just a side note on that also, I think so F1 might be partnering with Prema on or engineers from senior engineers from Prema put out a post saying they're looking for a lot of F4 race engineers moving forward, so in the next couple of months. So that might be something brewing there. So we'll see how that story develops. But I think it's a great step. It's a great almost replacement for W Series. Definitely in jeopardy given what F1 is doing now. Even though people for PR reasons will say that these two series can coexist together, but it hardly seems likely given.
These two series are not direct competitors to each other, but the money coming into these series would, the people,
is directly in competition with each other. Yeah, absolutely. And that's totally understandable. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what W Series says. It's not the only series. It's not the only series in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And that's a great segue into our next question. And that is Indian motorsport facing another uphill battle now? Obviously, this is in lieu of the Formula Regional Indian Championship and the Indian F4 that was supposed starting last week. In the month of November. But there is absolutely no news on what will be happening. It does seem cancelled. There have been no posts or update on the websites or on social media from the organizers. There hasn't been any communication from them after multiple have reported on this particular issue. And I'm sure they have reached out to them for their comments too. So, what is going on? Because really, what we were looking at was a build up to the Indian Formula E round, and then most likely the Indian MotoGP in 2024. And this was the wind up for that GP in 2024. And this was the wind up for that, right? And it seems it's not gonna happen anymore, at least for the next 6 to 8 months.
See, the the Hyderabad E-Prix and the Indian GP, MotoGP will happen most likely because they are completely different. I mean, yeah, the promoters are different,
promoter,
organizers are
organizer,
different,
or anything
everything.
like that, yeah.
And they are already existing series that are just coming into India to race, right? So that's much easier to accomplish than setting up two. In league was also going.
I think that is still happening.
I'm not sure.
I think
like
maybe.
I haven't read anything about that as well. So
Okay.
again, either way, 2 or 3 new series that were coming up, and they needed drivers for that. They needed neither have they not. I mean, they haven't signed any drivers. They don't even have the cars to. Yeah, and they
They haven't
don't have
announced
any
any
cars
drivers,
to
and it seems like
go forward with it. They were supposed to team up with Prema. There is no communication from Prema as well. So it's things because we were expecting so much from them, and
I mean, yeah, the pomp and show that they put up when announcing the series was insane. A name like
Yeah.
Kapil Dev was attached with the series because it was, also partly organized by Mumbai Falcons, who have done a great job with the last couple of years of, promoting Indian talent into F3 Asia at least, and now are sponsoring both, I think, Kushmani and Jehan Daruvla in part in their F2 and F3 campaigns. So, yeah, I wonder what it speaks of Mumbai Falcons' situation too, maybe a little bit. I'm not sure.
I mean,
don't think.
I don't think.
Let's put it this way. Their on-track efforts as a team do not have to be, interrelated with organizing this particular series. But definitely, the people involved are pretty much. The same. Definitely disheartening because I know a lot of people were looking forward to go see some racing on in India at least. And this was going to be, the stepping stone to see. Because, again, there were supposed to be sponsorships even for people to get in. Because, again, there were supposed to be sponsorships even for people to get into F3 Asia and from Indian F4 to
there was a
the
proper
Formula
ladder
regional
coming
stuff.
up to get Indian karters into F4 and then into the Formula Regional Indian Championship.
And I think it's more disheartening for them than it is for us as spectators because announced. But I'm guessing they did sign a few people during this time, especially those who were from India and who were looking forward to this opportunity. Definitely really disheartening for them. I mean, obviously there has been no communication, and everything that we say right now will be speculation. But just for that, what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, we really can't say, but because see, the first time they Aditya Patel and I think Arman Ibrahim, they came up with the initial Indian Racing League idea. It was very promising, and everyone thought because we got franchise cricket, franchise football, even franchise kabaddi, right? Yeah. So
franchise
it might work, and
everything.
it was a fairly decent first season, but it was not a commercially successful thing. And it stayed there. There was no second, it didn't go ahead and try to redo it, everything. And then they came up with this idea. So, and
they did get approved that they got everything done, and then it was just a matter of, I say just a matter of what, this the matter of putting the show on. The matter of putting the show on and putting it together.
That, they have been doing a lot of work over the years, so success. Yeah.
I'm not trying to discredit them.
Success
it's just,
might come eventually.
There are question marks.
There are still questions to be answered, and and you know, I like when it was announced, I was hopeful that they would learn from their mistakes of the past, but I like nobody knows what happened in between that. So
Yeah. On the same note, obviously there's a lot of talk about this sort of stuff, and now we are moving towards sustainable fuels. But is there an aspect of sustainable? Because not all the series, especially the junior series, are not gonna switch to whatever sustainable means, right? Whether that's alternate fuels, electric, hydrogen, whatever. Um, so does there need to be an aspect moving forward where all the different series, whether that's the Toyota series in New Zealand, whether that's the Super Formula series, does there need to be does there need to be some level of collaboration in developing the cars, like the F4 cars, the F3 cars, so that the different series can use those cars, the F3 cars, so that the different series can use those cars. Maybe not F2 and F3, but the regional series can use those cars, instead of having
yeah, I mean there's
every series having their own set of cars, let's say. Because that was something that was proposed for W Series when they were going out to Japan, I think.
there should be, and I don't know. I mean I believe there are chassis manufacturers there, right? There's Taurus, there's Dallara, and there might be one, and there's Wolf, but there are not a lot of chassis manufacturers. And same with engines. There's Mechachrome. There's like the F4 and F series will use Abarth engines, and the equipment available. So the scope for collaboration and collaborative development is high, and there should be, because as you said, these series won't get funding for sustainable movements, fuels or whatever, but
Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's really to cut costs for everyone. Like if you can rent
yeah,
cars
and
every year instead of buying them, maybe buying them makes sense over a 15-year period, but just to kick it off, maybe, or something like that, or to share the cost of operating the.
let's talk about for the W series. People were suggesting W series to rent cars from other series which run in the winter, and so like all that, which makes sense, because a lot of winter series don't use their cars during the season, and W series don't use their cars during the season, and W series and other European junior series do use their cars in the full season. So yeah, using the same equipment throughout the year would definitely save cost, and things like that. Equipment throughout the year would definitely save cost, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, we don't have eyes inside what is happening in what happens inside the uh, what goes into organizing one of these events. So it's really hard to say what is required. Organizing one of these events, so it's really hard to say what is required. But let's move on. Obviously this is not a very happy conversation so far, but let's move on to something happier, and that is how encouraging is the US Motorsport F1 crossover that has been happening over the last 2 weeks. Especially at the US GP and now at the Mexico GP. Right this morning, we had James Hinchcliffe in town for the US GP, and it was lovely to have him. And now we have Danica Patrick down in Mexico City
Even
Danica
James
Patrick down in
was
Mexico
at
City for the weekend.
absolutely.
And how cool is that?
To get, again, the Formula One push into America continues, and I think Danica Patrick has been on the F1 TV years ago as well, like last year or somewhere, but can warm up segments, and I mean basically so prominently
Yeah.
involved is great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
to be
mean,
really in the foreground with everyone, and being heard at all times throughout the weekend, not just like a short stint in the commentary box, or just
not
but
just a
really being out
FP1
there.
thing or post race interviews, but a proper personality in the paddock, in the comms box, and that was wonderful.
Yep, yeah, it was definitely a joy. And I mean, James Hinch, like we hear James Hinchcliffe, call the races for IndyCar, and he has been for the last year and a half, 2 years. And it's been lovely to hear him there, and it was great to see how easily he meshed with Will Buxton, Lawrence Barretto, Laura Winter, and so on and so forth. Uh, Will Buxton, Lawrence Barretto, Laura Winter, and so on and so forth. In the F1 TV, all the F1 TV shows. And I hope they continue to do that. Maybe they can extend it to
Yeah.
the races the race that happens in Canada. And obviously now we'll have
Yeah.
3 races in the US next
Mexico
plus
and
the
Canada. Yep.
race in Mexico City. So five of the 24, 25 races, we might have some IndyCar, NASCAR, you basically US motorsport crossover into F1, and I think that's great for all motorsport. Let's just put it that way. One question from the USG: what do you think about Williams'
Oh yes.
announcement of Logan Sargent?
That was, I mean, that was very encouraging, but obviously it comes with the condition that he needs to get those super license points, which he might, because yeah, they'll
Most
provide him.
like
Yeah, they'll, I mean,
he
they'll provide
most
him with
likely
all
would.
the free practice and testing running they can, and he's running third right now with a 14 point gap to seventh, and he needs to finish seventh or above to get those super license points, which seventh or above to get those super license points, which when you think about it is very difficult, but the form till now does not count. Abu Dhabi is a standalone race.
Yeah.
It is going to be very different. It is going to be, and Logan Sargent would, like, other drivers have not been driving race cars for a while now. Logan Sargent has been doing FP1 sessions for Williams regularly, so he will have that, that kick in him, get that extra edge on the racetrack. So he'll definitely finish. I mean, very excited, and yeah, it's going to be a good season for him next season.
Uh, yeah, I hope so. I mean, obviously, I hope he gets the super license skin in the game for someone
Yeah.
at the F2 round in Abu Dhabi. It was gonna be a lackluster round. Yeah, there's gonna be racing, but whatever. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to follow it. Now all eyes will be on Logan Sargent, and we know Logan did have a good run of races midway through the season, but then it fell off. So round. But the follow-up question to this is obviously so there was like a lot of not outrage, but people were confused why Jost Capito chose to make this announcement, which is a conditional offer basically.
Yeah.
Like one we get when we are going to uni. A conditional offer we get when we are going to uni. A conditional offer when when it could not happen. It could really look bad for Logan Sargent moving forward. It could really look bad for Logan
no.
Sargent.
Sorry, but I think Josh Capito has put his faith in Logan Sargent to finish well enough in the Abu Dhabi weekend to get those points, and it can backfire a lot, but I think it was a risk worth taking, because really, as we talked about all the episode before that, there's not a lot of drivers in the pool to get the 2 remaining Formula 1 seats.
Well, there's still Theo Porcher.
Yeah, but when you think about a Williams
I know what you're
seat,
saying. I'm just being an ass.
when you think about a
just being an
Williams
ass.
seat, there is not a lot of options that Josh Capito has. So to put his faith in Logan Sargent, to take that risk, and to build up that hype of an American driver driving in an
Yeah,
American-owned team, basically, is in an
yeah.
American-owned team, basically, is, yep, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, interesting you brought that up. I'm going to come back to that American owned team thing. Just back to that in a moment. Yeah, I think it was a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, he's just giving Logan Sargent wheeled and announcing him at the home race, giving an FP1 session, and really putting him there
Yeah.
out in front of 440,000 people at Kota. And on the other hand, obviously, this place is not that it wouldn't be there already, but it wouldn't have been there in the public eye unless after the fact. But yeah, I think it increases the pressure a little bit, but I don't think it changes the situation a whole lot for Logan Sargent, at least internally, because even if they didn't announce, they would have had to communicate this to Logan.
Yeah,
At some
absolutely. And
point or the
Logan
other,
himself would,
in my opinion,
even
right?
without his conditional offer, and even without, Logan would want to, perform at his best level in Abu Dhabi and secure P3 in the championship, nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get back to the American team thing once again, Jost Capito did fire some shots when he announced it, though, and there were follow-up questions on the driver of choice. And I think Jost Capito said along the lines of, if you have a young driver and a seat available for a seat at your team, you do not keep him waiting. You give him the seat or something like that. And obviously, this is indirect.
Yeah.
Maybe he meant it, maybe he didn't. We will never know. But it directly,
Yeah.
maybe he meant it, maybe he didn't. We will never know. But it directly,
Is Alpine.
the first thing that comes in your mind
Yeah.
is that this is shots fired against Alpine and Otmar Snavzar and Laurent Rossi, and how they kept Oscar Piastri waiting and lost out on him eventually. So clearly, Jost Capito sees Logan Sargent as a very. So clearly, Jost Capito sees Logan Sargent as a very talented individual who might have been poached
Yeah.
by other teams if he would have waited. And it's fair, not Jost, Logan Sargent has been endorsed by multiple people, not just in the F1 paddock, but also in the Indy. Has been endorsed by multiple people, not just in the F1 paddock, but also in the IndyCar paddock. Which means that an IndyCar seat wouldn't have been out of reach for him if he really wanted to make that switch. So clearly, Jost Capito making the right call in terms of young
Yeah,
talent
and
development, especially at
let's
Williams.
not forget.
Of young
Yeah,
talent
and
development, especially at
let's
Williams.
not forget, we can't judge any Formula 2 drivers stepping into Formula 1 just by their Formula 2 performances, because this season has been proof that anyone can either shine in Formula 1 or fall down to perform so good this season. He has been let down by the machinery and by people around him, like contacts and everything. But and the same
Yeah,
goes with
yeah.
Logan Sargent. Sure, he could have done another Formula 2, looked at like whatever came ahead, but he will get the chance. He will come into Formula 1 and he might just blow everyone away.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to the example,
Yeah.
but in a more negative sense, look at Mick Schumacher. He didn't have a great F2, and he had a insane couple of seasons, and then he stepped into F1, and he hasn't really shown through. Like you said, anything can happen. Lance Stroll over the last 6-7 years has developed into someone who's
Yeah.
more competitive than we would have thought earlier. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for Nicholas Latifi, but even Latifi finished second in one of his seasons. So you just never know. Sorry, this podcast is going to be really long because I'm going to add another question to this now, and that is, who is going to be the next who is going to be the next American team in F1? And I asked this because before we went on the USGP, right, Gunther Steiner made a comment that it seems Zach Brown is trying to make McLaren the F1 team of America. And he said, I don't remember what he said, but it was either something along the lines of, it's not going to happen. Like Haas is the American team, or there is enough room for two. I'm not sure what he exactly said, but he did refer to McLaren, Zach Brown trying to make McLaren the American F1 team. But now there's a third contender, Williams Racing, with an American driver in that seat. I don't know if that makes a huge difference. having Logan Sargent in that seat, but it does in this race. When I say it doesn't make a huge difference, what I'm referring to is in the Williams operation and how they've been, even though they've been owned by an American conglomerate or fund for the last couple of years. But from a marketing perspective, it's going to make a difference because they haven't marketed themselves as an American team, but
Yeah,
now
I mean,
they have.
I don't
good
think
reason
Williams
to.
will market themselves as an American team because I
Now
mean,
they have
I don't
good
think
reason
Williams will market themselves as an American team because the consortium that bought over Williams sort of promised that they will keep the Williams name and they will keep the heritage and whatever. And Williams has strong root. And talking about McLaren has strong roots back here, but the way Zach Brown is operating, and they have an IndyCar team and all that, so of course that makes a huge difference, and you do attract fans from the American Formula One in that way. But I think Haas will still be the American F1 team.
See, you say that, but like in my eyes at least, I mean, we're gonna touch on this later a little bit. But yes, there were a lot of Haas merchandise. I just don't see Haas as an American F1 team, and I don't know if that is a me issue or if that is the general consensus. Because to me, the McLaren has a much larger presence in American motorsport and has a lot more love from the American fans than Haas does, and it's not just a matter of marketing or the way they have placed themselves. It's also a matter of how they've operated. And there is nothing less American than operating with a Russian. I mean,
Yeah,
in one way, in terms of PR, there's nothing less American than operating with a Russian company as your title sponsor, and then keeping with a Russian company as your title sponsor, and then keeping their colors. I did like the livery update, but I'm obviously digressing there. Which is why, in my opinion, and then again, the team is not run technically by an American. Gunther Steiner is not American in any sense of the word, and the American who owns the team is never really there in front of the cameras or talking to us, and he's really absent, from the Haas fold almost. And the only time we hear of him or think of him is
Yeah.
when Haas is in
No,
the bin.
so sorry. I think what McLaren and Red Bull sort of these are global teams with huge fandoms across the world. Haas does not have a fandom across the world in a real fandom sort of thing across the world. But if you talk about fans, the largest number of fans of Haas you'll find in America, and I mean that's where I am coming from.
It's like a consolation
Yeah, I mean-
prize, because
Yeah, I mean-
prize, because we can't say McLaren is an American team and a world team.
No,
so we're just gonna say
my
Haas
point
is
is
the American team.
My point is
It's
my
sort of
point
a
is
consolation
you will
prize.
see as many Red Bull fans as McLaren fans in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, saying like McLaren fans and Red Bull fans are all over the place, whereas
Yeah,
Haas fans
sort
are
of,
really
yeah.
just based in America for the most part. There may be truth to that, but I don't think that makes them the American team, in my opinion. I feel even with just Williams releasing their Miami special merch back in May, that made them like so.
Yeah.
Again, it might just be the way I look at things. My optics are crazy. But I like this 3 horse race. I mean, yes, Williams has history in the UK, but there is nothing wrong with I feel moving forward and marketing the American driver to the American audience in the best way possible, which helps Williams move forward both financially, and in the eyes of the people. But just to close this off, obviously Jost Capito is relying on young talent, but this also means Jost Capito is confident in Alex Albon leading the Williams team over the next couple of years. Obviously, Logan Sargent is only in for a 1-year deal, I believe. But again, obviously Logan Sargent is only in for a 1-year deal, I believe. But again, a lot of responsibility will fall on Alex Albon to carry the team forward
Yeah.
in the next 3 seasons. We really need to move on because there's a lot to talk about. And as we were talking about, there's another question popping up in my head, and I'm like, okay, we'll keep that for later. Just for sport, does Gene Haas need to find someone other than Gunther Steiner to run that team? But we, it's all speculation, and it's going to be nonsense. So we'll come back to that in a week or two. Let's get into more concrete stuff. Stuff that actually matters. The next question, Vedant, is that is a 10% reduction a minor breach of the cost cap? Now, obviously, in addition to the 10%, the reason I only put in 10% aero development there was because that is what will actually affect the development of the car next season, and not the £7 million or $7 million fine that F1 has, given Red Bull, which will come.
If you ask Toto Wolff, he'll say it's too less. If you ask our dear friend, not our friend, but Mr. Christian Horner, sorry, he'll say it's too much. But yeah, I don't know. I think I have an effect in the development, but at the same time, it's not enough as a punishment to the cost cap breach.
I think I agree with that, and I'll outline why. I think I agree with that, and I'll outline why. Who's the technical person from Ferrari who's usually getting interviewed, except for not Mattia Binotto, the other person. I'm just forgetting his name right now. Whoever, right? So this tech person from Ferrari said basically, it's not a big enough penalty because financially they can still use the extent of the cost cap. Yes, there is 10% reduction in the aero development time, which includes CFD and wind tunnel running time, but they can use, which might still allow them to unlock the gains just in a different way. So they might choose to update their chassis, update their suspension, update something else on the car, and not utilize it for aero testing. They might use it for weight reduction. So really what it has done is help Red Bull narrow down their ends for next year's development more than anything else. So I understand why people feel that it's not a big enough penalty because financially Red Bull won't hit with a penalty. And I think the other side of that is Red Bull saying, and Red Bull supporters saying, oh, it's too big of a penalty for just Red Bull saying, and Red Bull supporters saying, oh, it's too big of a penalty for just what is a £400,000 breach. But I think we have to look at it in such a way that it is called a minor breach, regardless whether it's $1 or whatever the upper amount of 5% is, 7 million or whatever it is, right? And in my, not that it matters, but in my eyes, it was still a £1.86 million breach because it is up to Red Bull to make sure that their accounting problems are sorted by them, not by the FIA. So regardless of what that is, it still has to be treated like a $7 million breach. It cannot be treated. Rules have to be rewritten and be like, okay, depending on how much you breach it by, there'll be a sliding scale of penalties. But that is not the case. So, which is why I think I fall on the side which says, okay, it is not enough of a penalty for breaching the cost cap by $7 million. Apparently. And I feel, I strongly feel that Red Bull should have been penalized financially on next year's budget. I don't think they should have been penalized 5%, but anything in the 2.5% region, they should have been penalized 5%. But anything in the 2.5% region of the cost cap would have been fair in my opinion. Because I feel the reason or the essence of the penalty is basically to get right. So reduction of advantage means putting the team at a disadvantage, and just the reduction in aero development time is not really a big or a fair enough disadvantage to Red Bull compared to the other teams and their allocated time.
It's a shame that it's come to this. Okay. What is it called? agreeing to a sort of deal with the FIA about the punishment or whatever. It should not have come to that. It should have been strict from the day one itself, and it should have been very strict one itself, and it should have been very strict from day one itself.
Yeah, I think on the same team as people saying, there shouldn't be a minor and major
Breach.
overspend
Yep.
breach. It should just be a breach, and you get penalized like you breached it. There's a highest like you breached it. There's a harsh penalty. So I mean, I understand why there needs to be a sliding scale, but maybe it can be termed or set up in a way that is more logical. Let's say, because again, teams might game because this is setting a precedence, like it or not, going to breach the cost cap. Now, what would be even more infuriating would be if another team breached the cost cap, let's say this year, and it's still a minor overspend breach, but it's on the higher side of what is called a minor overspend breach, but they're penalized more for that compared to Red Bull, because then ideally, the penalty should be the same or equal has been penalized this year, and it should not matter on the dollar amount by which it has been breached, because
Yeah.
that is not how the rules are set up.
Absolutely, it's going to be complicated from here on in. There definitely will be further breaches in the future, because there's no guarantee that any team will in the future because there's no guarantee that any team will stay within that cost cap, and anytime there is a breach, there will be more drama, there will be more debates and more lobbying.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about the FIA, this is a great segment to our next question, and that is it time for the FIA to have the same race director plus stewards group for each race
Well,
for the entire season?
It should.
And that is obviously in lieu of what happened at the US. Race director told Haas that you have 1 hour instead of the 30 minutes as said in the rules, and then it got repealed when Alpine protested against it or reviewed the decision, whatever happened exactly. But
First of all,
yeah, what are your thoughts?
I would like to give my uh, admiration to of pettiness that has used, because
Yeah.
throughout the season, Kevin Magnussen has been penalized with that a warning flag for driving a damaged car, and Haas did it twice in the USGP. The first was rejected, and then they appealed Fernando Alonso. So I love that pettiness, but it's high time that FIA get their act together. Whatever they do, I mean, this has been going on for a long while now. Last season it was track limits and everything else. Then at the end of the season we had that big, humongous elephant in the room, and then now this season when we started this season and when the two race directors were announced, we were obviously very skeptical about it, because the only thing we needed from FIA was consistency, and two race directors do not create consistency. How did FIA? And yeah.
Yeah, it's almost the prophecy is fulfilling itself, where
Yeah.
fans might rather have Michael Masi back than live with two race directors. But it's kind of sad, Niels Wittich and I forget the other race director. I mean, clearly, it's not that there have been minor inconsistencies. There have been huge inconsistencies in the way the races have been directed, and the stewardship of the races thereafter, which has been the case for a couple of years now, or even before that. But if nothing,
Yep.
will not go anywhere. But if nothing else, it just goes to show the sort of job that
Absolutely.
Charlie Whiting was doing all those years ago, and everything, and the way he handled the press, the way he handled everything around the FIA's image almost. That just goes to show how important Charlie Whiting was to the sport, and continues to be almost in a way. Um, I think the FIA has nothing to lose by just simply experimenting with the same group of stewards and race director for the entire season. They have experimented with two race stewards and race director for the entire season. They have experimented with two race directors and a changing group of stewards. I don't, even if it gets worse, they can always go back. It's a reversible decision basically, and there is no reason that the FIA shouldn't experiment in order to make the sport. No reason that the FIA shouldn't experiment in order to make the sport better or fairer, moving forward. All right, let's let's get to the last three questions of the day. We're 50 minutes in, so it's definitely been a while, but all right, let's talk about them. It's definitely been a while, but all right, let's talk about the Mercedes Mexico GP first. And here's the question: obviously, did Mercedes throw away a chance at a win at the Mexico GP?
I mean, the Red Bull were pretty dominant, and Max Verstappen was pretty dominant throughout. But the hards did not seem to work as much as Mercedes would have liked, right? So
I think the short answer is that Mercedes pulled a Ferrari and lost the plot.
Excuse me.
Mercedes started on the mediums, and I was like, okay, where are they going with this? Clearly, it's either a two-stop or you go really long on the mediums, and then they sort of pit stopped in a no man's land, like 4 or 5 laps after Sergio and Max had pitted. So, and then they pitted George Russell like another 4 or 5 laps after that. I'm like, it just didn't make sense at any point of time what Mercedes were doing. What I thought Mercedes should have done was, as soon as Sergio pitted, because you don't want to come out behind Sergio, you pit Lewis instead of waiting and take the game to Max, and then you short stint Lewis on the hard tires while Max is on mediums, and the medium in the 15 laps, and then it almost seemed like the hard started to fall off as the day went on. Instead of the mediums, so that was kind of surprising. But yeah, I would have short stinted, Lewis, and this is not in hindsight. I'm saying this as I'm watching the race. Short stinted Lewis, and then put him on the mediums again to finish the race. And then it would have been or to continue with on the same set of tires until the end of the race, which they did in this case, as Lewis went on the hards. And obviously, Lewis's pit stop, they basically give Red Bull back 6 seconds by waiting those extra 4 or 5 laps as Max made up time on fresher tires. So yeah, kind of lost and then went on to the hards. They also lost the plot in the same way. They started 9th and 10th, could have come home with great points, but again, just couldn't make it work on the hards.
Even then, Mercedes. I mean, even though Mercedes lack the race pace as such, because they have been doing pretty well in qualifying over the last few races. And they're lacking. No one can match Red Bull and Max Verstappen, especially in that race pace. Yeah, it would have been close, absolutely.
Yeah, but it would have been close had they kept up with, had they kept up with strategy, and especially with Toto Wolff coming out right. Had they kept up with strategy, and especially with Toto Wolff coming out right before the start of the race and saying, okay, this is where we win or we don't win, and then. The other surprising thing was they didn't split strategies either between George and Lewis, which is really, really surprising to see. Because yes, you can choose to start on the medium tires and see. Because yes, you can choose to start on the medium tires and see how the race develops with one of the drivers, but you really want to be, giving Max a run for the money on the same set of tires usually. So again, not sure. Almost seems that Mercedes have become rusty. Mercedes have become rusty from not having to fight for race wins over the last 20 races or so.
That actually may be it, because I don't know, they had that smooth running, smoothly oiled machine of domination.
Yeah, I hope Hannah Schmitz is the most highly paid race strategist on the grid, because I mean, Ferrari can't beat her clearly. Mercedes can't beat her. So I doubt there's another team on the grid that will ever take the game to her over the next couple of years, maybe, unless the car development, which is unlikely with Adrian Newey, is still there. But yeah, I think yeah, that was a short answer. And another short question is the Ferrari 499P the most beautiful race car ever? I mean, I was looking at the new Ferrari car that came out this year at for F1, uh, and I was like, all right. And I mean, it was beautiful, it was nice, and I was like, okay, yeah, this looks great. I was excited about it, but the only reason I stared at it for too long was to really understand, what Ferrari had done, what the design was, and the little, bits and pieces, intricacies. You just wanna sit there and admire the 499P, and just
Yeah.
it's
No, absolutely. I know what you're saying because it's just beautiful, and it reminds you of the cars of the sports cars of the Ferrari. Then against the Ford GT, Ford GT40, sorry, is that Ferrari, the curvy Ferrari, and all those cars, the Lola cars of yesteryears, the Dallara cars of yesteryears. So it reminds you of the Dallara cars of yesteryears. So it reminds you of that, and the yellow.
I was just about to say that red and yellow, that yellow accent. Oh, it's just
Yeah.
it does things to you that. I was just about to say that red and yellow, that yellow accent. Oh, it's just
Yeah.
it does things to you that you cannot describe by just being in its presence. I wasn't sure if Ferrari was going to be was getting into IMSA next year, but it seems they're not. They'll just be participating in WEC next year, and they're supposed to debut the car at Sebring, 12 hours of Sebring, next year. And
Yeah.
I am debating going there.
A friend of mine was at
Pretty hard right
Imola
now.
yesterday because Ferrari, and
The finale
he was at
Mondiali
Imola. He
event.
saw all those cars go around, and he saw the phone 99P go around. I haven't had the chance to talk to him yet because I know I'm very jealous, and I won't treat him respectfully. But it's too good.
Just do. I love how
Sorry.
Ferrari has embraced the yellow. It didn't look that it looked good on it looks good on the accents that Carlos Sainz has on his car, and people have said that before. It didn't look that great when they did the shark fin thing, or the
Yeah.
they put that yellow, but on that LMP, I mean, Ferrari has yellow in their color kit for a long time, and recently we saw it on the SP1
Yes.
Monza, but it came with the silver and yellow. And even with the 296 GTB, it was silver and yellow, not red and yellow.
The red and yellow
Similarly
is
with the SF90.
the red and yellow combination is too good, and
Yeah, I can just sit here and just make
believe
those
you me,
noises
it
over
is
and over
going to be
again.
one of the most beautiful supercar grids at Le Mans next year because you have the Glickenhaus,
To-
which is a
Dude, the Glickenhaus is looking.
Yeah,
it's
after
in
the
like
Ferrari,
it's
after
really
the
in
Ferrari,
rearview
but-
mirror of the line them up on a runway. The Glickenhaus would be at the
Yeah.
very end
no.
with
So
the
Alpine
Alpine now.
won't be there. Alpine is coming. Alpine will come up with a new hypercar. Yeah.
Yeah, but,
But
I'm saying this
we'll
season.
have the
I'm saying from
Glickenhaus,
this
which
past season. Yeah.
is a very good looking car in itself. We'll have
It's
the
a good
Toyota,
looking
which
car,
is
yeah,
a
absolutely.
generic sports car, which we were expecting. Have
It's
the
a good
Toyota,
looking
which
car,
is
yeah,
a
absolutely.
generic sports car, which we were expecting. We'll have the Audi. No, sorry, the Porsche, which BMW
the-
isn't coming
the
to Le Mans
BMW?
next season. Yeah. Then we'll have
Oh, they're in them Saudi.
Peugeot, which is then we'll have
Oh, they're in them Saudi.
Peugeot, which is drastically different from any other hypercar. I mean, just
Well, no,
But
not. I mean, it doesn't have the rear wing, but it
It
does
looks
look
very
cool.
futuristic.
It looks.
and
really
when you
cool,
look at the Ferrari,
but
it
does
looks
look
very
cool.
futuristic.
It looks.
and
really
when you
cool.
look at the Ferrari and when you look at the Glickenhaus, they look retro, and they look like the sports cars of.
Yeah.
I mean, they look sports cars, and the Peugeot looks like some rocket or something. So it's going to be very interesting when they go head to head. And there's also Cadillac, and I don't remember how that looks because they haven't released it yet. They only have some camouflage images.
And there's
Again,
also the
Acura
new
is not
Acura.
coming
There's
to
also the new
Le
Acura.
Mans, yeah, but it's there, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's still it's almost that is what the both
Yeah.
series have done. But
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking. Like 3 years, 5 years from now, it's gonna be a head scratching grid for
I mean,
the biggest class
If
in sports car
the
racing.
GTE is going away, we'll have GT AM, right? If we reduce
Yeah,
grid and if we accommodate all LMP, LMD and hypercars from IMSA and VEC, yeah, LMH and
LMH and
whatever. This is
yeah.
going to be like whenever that happens at Le Mans, it is going to be mega.
GT3 cars look good too.
But the GT3s are
not
always
as good as the hypercars, but yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look at my bank statement now, because I was originally planning on going to Daytona Beach for the 24 hours and not going to Sebring, but there is a huge incentive to go to Sebring now, especially since Sebring has a double-header weekend with IMSA and WEC there both. But I was like, it's the same cars, but it's not the same.
I wanted to
cars.
go to the Le Mans centenary next year, but I know it'll be centenary next year, but I know it'll be expensive. I know I'll have an internship at that time, and I know I don't have anyone to go along with to make that trip to France. I mean, it's
You still
half
have
a year.
You still have a year.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. But yeah, it's high time I went back and looked at my bank statement and my financials for the next year, which is not looking great because I just went to urgent care and the orthopedics office last week. So we'll see. We will see.